Thank you so much for joining us, especially to those who find themselves back in their home offices, their children, partners, relatives, or flatmates today. Today, we're really looking forward to having you with us on another major stepping stone of our Tech for Society innovation series. Over the last 12 months, we've been undertaking a journey to understand the seismic impact of new technologies on the economy and society, and more so to develop ideas and concepts of how a coalition of civil society, academia, political thinkers and advisors and businesses can shape and build the framework of how to harness the potential of new technologies. This process was co-created by the Tech for Society Consortium, representing those groups in society. They've supported us along the way, which began with a launch event with, amongst others, Jeff Mulgan and Patricia Nantz in November 2019, and continued with 3 workshops on the economy, society, and the individual throughout the summer and autumn of 2020. The consortium and the idea of co-creation stand at the core of Tech for Society, as we believe that we need broad alliances in the public and private sector and in society to make technologies work for everyone and change the way of how innovation processes are designed, which is often guided by private and not public interests. That embodies tech with society. So the key results of the Tech for Society series are brought together in a policy paper that we are launching today and that you can download on our website. As with almost everything else in our lives and society, the thinking around these issues has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic and the sudden shift to a daily life with much fewer social interaction has been accelerating the digital transformations. New technologies have proven extremely useful in the provision of public and private services, but the new digital world emerging from this crisis will continue having an impact on social relations at home, at work, and in society and the economy, with yet unforeseen consequences for us all. I'm delighted to have with us a stellar panel of experts from politics, business, and academia today who will share with us their views on tech with society and the paper. So the run of order will be that first, the key points of the paper will be presented by Daniela Blaschke, who's a policy fellow at das Borggräfe Zentrum and who has been a key factor in shaping this series. And second, we will hand over to Thomas Ramge, who will introduce the panelists shortly after and share the discussion. Thomas is the technology correspondent for Brand 1 and a contributing editor for The Economist. And he is, and I guess that's fair to say, one of the leading thinkers and authors when it comes to the relationship between capitalism, technology, and society. So let's begin with the presentation of the paper.
Hi, my name is Daniela Blaschke, and I'm a policy fellow with das Borggräfe Zentrum. It is my pleasure to present to you the Tech for Society policy paper, a paper that is the result of an ambitious cooperation project across academia, business, civil society, and politics to develop a new model of value-based technological innovation. What do you mean by value-based, you may rightfully ask? The value-based approach of the Tech for Society Consortium starts with the political perspective, which is present in the institutional settings where innovation takes place, as well as in the mindset of innovators, and which ultimately becomes an integral part of the innovations themselves. Our political perspective fosters a democratic European approach to technological innovation that is both inclusive and sustainable. Our value base are the principles of the European Union, including human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, and human rights. Just last week, the Berlin Declaration on Digital Society and Value-Based Digital Government reaffirmed European leaders' commitment to fundamental rights and European values in the digital transformation. These values need to set the guidelines for European policymaking, including regulations for the digital platform economy, like the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, presented by the European Commission yesterday. Tech for Society also has a deeply practical side. Among us are practitioners from the private and public sector who will be able to turn recommendations into action. Together, we advocate an approach to societal challenges like economic and social consequences of the coronavirus pandemic, the climate crisis, inequalities, and increasing political polarization in liberal democracies, an approach that is based on our values and on the assumption that technological innovation should be the result of a collaboration between academia, businesses, civil society, and politics. Spelling out this approach, we develop policy recommendations which can promote progress for the economy, for society, and for the individual. In the economy, digital technologies are redefining the parameters of value creation and business models. We should not miss the chance to shape the digital economy to address issues like resource scarcity, decarbonize energy production, and promote good jobs. So how do we shape it? One of our policy recommendations for value-based technological innovation for the economy calls for missions to Mars and beyond. The public and private sector should dare to jointly undertake major innovation projects which involve citizens and demonstrate that, as a collective effort, technological innovation is in fact able to address not only economic, but also ecological and social challenges. In society, there is a need to rethink and restructure existing models and modes of governance to ensure citizens' trust in the digital age. For example, ensuring that citizens can trust digital public services. Our policy paper suggests to focus on two areas of reform. First, expanding the capacities of the public sector to innovate. And second, promoting trust and enhancing inclusion and social cohesion through accessibility and transparency. Last but not least, at the individual level, new technologies have the potential to improve well-being, including the provision of high-quality healthcare and the promotion of safe and well-paid work. Both are essential aspects of a good life for many. The coronavirus pandemic has been a stark reminder of that. The ability to participate in innovation projects for better health or better work, therefore, is a prerequisite for technological innovation for the individual. A statutory right for lifelong learning, translated to everyday life as a fixed amount of money for individual education, may not sound very exciting, but prove to be very effective. You are very welcome to dive deeper into these recommendations in our paper. They are a collection inspired by the contributions from the Tech for Society Consortium, as well as from panelists and participants of the 3 workshops held over the last year. There is one more source of inspiration, however, that I would like to point out to you. In order to increase the robustness of our recommendations, we have tested all our ideas against 6 post-COVID-19 scenarios. These scenarios help to imagine more and less favorable futures and possible pathways for value-based innovation ecosystems emerging from the pandemic. We have documented these 6 futures of tech and post-COVID-19 societies in the paper. For example, in one scenario that regards the pandemic as an opportunity to bring forward a progressive agenda called New Golden Age, anyone who innovates does it in order to address society's needs. And to that end, inclusive and transparent innovation processes are omnipresent. In this scenario, all there is left to do for progressives seems to be to further strengthen collective innovation capacities to ensure that what is supposed to happen in this new golden age actually happens. The strength of thinking and planning along different scenarios is not just the fact that you have to describe in detail what a favorable future may look like and how you will get there, but that you do the same for less favorable futures. For example, our scenario called Radical Individualism depicts a future in which trust in collective systems has been eroded and replaced by highly individualized physical and digital gated communities. In this future, mainly corporate actors innovate to secure competitive advantage. How can value-based technological innovation be promoted in this world? This question is not as easy to answer here as it is in a more favorable scenario, but it is equally important. We found an answer, but I will let you read about that in the paper. This Tech for Society policy paper is a stepping stone to co-creative, value-based technological innovation. The idea is based on an impulse given at our opening conference by Jeff Mulgan. Leveraging different perspectives, he introduced the concept of collective intelligence and how it can generate public benefit with regards to transformation processes in decarbonization and the labor market. According to him, the key is to mobilize and apply collective intelligence to these problems to turn them into common goods. Our paper in many aspects reflects this concept, most notably in its title. The Tech for Society policy paper is called Tech with Society, because collaboration and co-creation with society are at the heart of finding solutions for societal challenges. I will conclude by stressing that in our view, a democratic European approach to technological innovation is highly compatible with this concept of co-creation. And that while Europe certainly does not yet live up to this ideal, the Union is well equipped to do so for the following reasons. First, Europe has the ability to pool best practices and expertise from across the continent and define its own model of technological innovation based on strengths in areas where it can achieve or build on a competitive edge. Second, Europe should build on its comparatively strong ability to make decisions based on consensus. Others may often be quicker, but Europe's innovations may prove to be more inclusive and sustainable. Third, progressive allies are back. Europe should not follow a solitary path for technological innovation, but explore the opportunities of knitting stronger ties with the US and the incoming Biden administration on the issues connected to this endeavor. Let me close by saying that we need the long-awaited Conference on the Future of Europe to address the question of value-based technological innovation, engaging citizens to openly discuss what kind of future they collectively envision and how technological innovations could help to realize this vision. Thank you.
Well, I think we have to thank Daniela and Florian, first of all, for bringing us together today. But first and foremost, for having gone through 1 year of very, very thorough and hard work, of which we've now got the result, or something like probably a first result, which is up for discussion. So thanks once again for not only pushing the topic that is probably dear to our hearts, or most of our hearts, who are now attending these sessions, but also for being open to get feedback. And well, feedback is always important, and sometimes it's hard to get, but that's what we are here for, and we're going to do it in 2 steps. We first will have a first round of impulses from three experts who know the subject you've been working on the last 12 years very well. And then after these first 3 impulses, we're gonna break out into 3 breakout sessions where all of you are very much invited to partake, to tell us what you think about the paper and about this very, very interesting, in my perspective, scenario approach that the group writing the paper has chosen. So, well, thanks in advance for our 3 speakers who were invited to give feedback now. And we're going to start with Julia Borggräfe. Nice to see you again, Julia. Haven't met in a while. Great that you're here. Julia is the head of the Department of Digital Transformation of the World of Work of the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, which is a long and complicated title. I think we can cut it short as she's one of the biggest forethinkers of how to reinvent the future of work within the German federal government. Thanks a lot that you're here, Julia. Thanks a lot that you take the time to give feedback.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for the very warm welcome, and thank you very much to the invitation and to having the chance to give feedback today. And hi, of course, to Professor Bryson and Dr. Rothe in this round. I'm very glad to participate in this series, and I think that the event addresses one of the central questions of our time. I think it's very up to date. We just heard about the European Commission proposals to regulate on AI, so I think we are really in the center of the discussion that's going on at the moment. So I think from my perspective, and I'm happy to share some thoughts today from our perspective. At the moment, we see a technological change which really leads to profound developments at the economy, in the world of work, and in society as a whole. And so digitalization is one of the drivers of this transformation. And what every one of us has experienced in this tough year, strange year, whatever, the corona crisis accelerates the digital transformation even more. It becomes faster and faster, and I think we have to keep on track. So how these developments will take place depends largely on how we deal with this situation and how we shape the transformation, because the transformation is not given to us, we will shape it. So in this context, the progressive Zentrum, this progressive Zentrum, in my opinion, ask the right questions. It means how can we ensure that technological development will not be an end in itself? Instead, how can technologies such as AI benefit economy, society, and the individual best? So for individual well-being, work plays a key role, especially for us and our responsibility. And of course, AI and artificial intelligence has the potential to alter the structure of labor markets and employment models completely, for the better or for the worse. And of course, we want to shape it to the better, of course. So let's first look at the area of occupational safety and health. And in some factories, you know this, for example, employees are equipped with wearable devices that can measure his or her stress levels, the working hours, and other parameters. So it's about whereabouts, about working pace. It's very personal information. So while this information can be very helpful on the one side, for example, for recognizing patterns that may be conducive to accidents, the data use is very personal, as I said. It's about whereabouts, it's about working pace. So after all, the simple fact of being monitored at work can be very stressful for employees, especially if they know they are affected. So I also want to consider, maybe somebody should go on mute. We have very, very tough sound in the background. Thank you for the technique. So I also want to consider the broader level of changing skill set requirements on the labor markets, because some jobs will be automated and no new ones will be created. So the competence requirements of employees are changing and will change continuously. And this is something we really have to understand. The range of use cases, of course, is much wider than these two examples, and I can stretch here in 5 minutes. But what these examples have in common is that there's no predetermined way in which AI influences work. So I come back to my point that I made before. We can shape our future, but we should know what we shape. So it's not only up to policymakers to shape this development towards a safe and trustworthy use of AI. And I think we have to be aware that we talk about a very, very strong change process, which is more maybe sometimes about the cultural perspective of change than on the technical change. And what makes change processes successful? It's about knowledge, it's about trust, it's about transparency. So I think in this study we see many points that belongs to this idea of a change process in total. So this is why I really like the idea of a model of value creation based on co-creation, because it's a process that involves actors from different parts of society, such as business, politics, academia, and civil society. And this is something which might create this trust, this transparency, and a network that is reliable. So our narrative as the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, or BMIS, as we call ourselves, is investing at least as much in people as in technology. So we want to ensure that the further development of artificial intelligence applications is based on a broad social discussion process and is thus focused mainly on people and the common good. So it's in the end about the change process and its acceptance. Our Observatory for Artificial Intelligence in Work and Society that we started in March, we call it AI Observatory, has a key role to play in this context. The AI Observatory is one of the outcomes of the federal government's AI strategy. You might have seen it just has been updated last week, and it's embedded in the structures of Policy Lab Digital Work and Society in the BMIS, our Denkfabrik. The AI Observatory is seeking to engage in a dialogue with artificial intelligence experts as well as with members of the wider society. These include representatives of trade unions, business, academia, the media, and the civil society. So I think we share here a very, very similar idea. The project Civil Innovation Platform is also part and an example of the German federal government's AI strategy and a cornerstone of an upcoming AI ecosystem for the common good. It's our working title. We do together with the Federal Ministry for Environment and the Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth. It aims for the cross-sectoral development and implementation of artificial intelligence applications for the common good, from the basic idea via a viable concept to the realization. Because I think we also prove that it really is something that does a positive or gives a positive aspect to people's life and not create danger or harm or whatever. So the core of the project is a multifunctional internet platform. You might find it on www.civic-innovation.de that enables the networking and matching of potential project partners. It connects developers and startups with municipalities, small and mid-sized entrepreneurs and companies, public administration, trade unions, social political organizations, and so on. So it's a very, very interdisciplinary approach. And just yesterday, we have closed our first idea contest called AI is what we make it, to emphasize this point of creation, of shaping. With the context, we make it possible for anybody interested to share ideas on the use of AI for the common good and develop them in a collaborative process and an interactive and interdisciplinary process. So as you can see, co-creation is not utopia, but already reality in parts. It can work if co-creation becomes not just a label, but a mindset. So thank you very much for giving me the time to share some ideas and giving feedback to your very interesting study. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the feedback and for the pitch for your institution. Anyhow, no, thanks a lot. We are looking very much forward to go deeper in the breakout session. And as we are running a little bit behind, let's immediately start with Joanna. We are very delighted to get your feedback, as obviously the paper is very, very close to your expertise. You're a professor of ethics and technology at the Hertie School, but you also advising many governments, transnational institutions, non-government organizations in the broader field of tech and society, and especially concerning AI. So we are very curious what you have to say on the paper. Thanks, Joanna, for being here.
Well, thanks for having me here, and congratulations on getting the paper out. And also, I mean, it's largely a great paper. So of course, I'll not talk about that very much. And I'll skip to a few other perspectives. Well, one thing I really want to congratulate you on, a lot of people, unfortunately, in the AI sub area of technology for society, technology for good, when they talk about values-based, they often mean, let's capture human values and then encode them in AI and then sort of force all humans to conform to this set of values. That is not the right way to think about that. And you didn't do that, but you still, I think, worry a little too much about, you know, the software itself, the code itself. The process that brought us to the OECD principles of AI, which I'm going to only focus on those as the culmination of about a decade of effort. 50 national governments, including the entire OECD and the G20, have signed up to those. It came to the conclusion that we must be human-centered, and you guys are fundamentally human-centered. But I think we can push a little farther on that understanding of what does it mean to be human-centered. It's that technology is just a means by which we communicate our values. And that, so it isn't only about how do we build technology well, it's about, given that technology has changed, how do we do the things we've always done, right? How do we do politics? How do we do international relations? So I don't think it's just the software revolution that's been the big change. I think it is the digital revolution. And the digital revolution has some really interesting shifts in what we need. it isn't only that we have, as you mentioned, these unregulated new sectors, which we do. And I think the DMA sounds like it's going to be great for thinking about how to handle, for example, social media, search. These are things that we didn't used to do. But more generally, there's also some areas that are sort of semi-regulated now, like how software works in the automotive sector and things like that. So as a whole, we can think about what are the extra pieces we need. For example, auditing expertise, clearly encoding that software is a product. So even if the software itself performs a service, that product law, standard product law, and product liabilities do apply when you release software, whether you call it AI or not, or whether you try to get us to call it AI or not. But I think beyond that, there are fundamental changes to international relations because of the fact that we have this new form of property that can change, that can be replicated so perfectly and moved so quickly across transnational borders. So this is what I was sort of coming back to before. I think we will have to think of some changes about how we govern and how we do international relations. And I think in particular, we need to sort of level up our international relations, which is very timely because we've also hit this crisis of the climate. I agree the pandemic is the crisis of the moment, but there's at least 3 simultaneous crises, the others being the crisis of the pandemic, of the climate, and the crisis of digital governance and the assault on the rule of law. So when you talk about co-creation, I don't think we should only be focusing on innovating and co-creating tech. I think rather we should be thinking about innovating and co-creating, well, as you do, sometimes you go and you say that we need to create society. But it's not just about like having these little projects that are AI for good or tech for good. It's about, in general, thinking about how we're re-innovating all of society and all of governance. And of course, we've already come down on this. So one critique I had was that I would rather focus on our climate crisis as a grand challenge instead of creating a new climate crisis on a new planet, Mars. I talked about the co-ownership. Oh yeah, there was a little confusion about does we need to clarify with big tech that we own the data. Well, actually, it's a little more complicated than that. The data that they store is just an abstraction of our lives. It's not our entire lives. And each business will keep a different abstraction. So it's not quite as simple as saying, hey, that's ours and we have to publicize it. It is definitely part of us. As the GDPR makes clear, there's parts of us that are captured in the data, which is hosted on proprietary infrastructure, on technology infrastructure by big tech. So we have a complicated thing to thrash out there that we haven't had quite to this extent before. I want to point out, I had a paper that came out Friday. A lot of this disruption is not only about digital or tech, it's also about inequality. Well, maybe this is technology, but I mean not only software, not only the digital technology. We've had this kind of situation of very high inequality and very high political polarization. Those go together. At the same time, we had the same thing, which led us to World War I. And we all know that it took us decades to dig out of that context and get to a more level playing field. So I don't like the emphasis. It's not only social media that's changed us or that's polarized us. And it's not that, we can't access new ideas on social media. In fact, lots of people are neophiles and they are seeing new parts of life and they are finding each other. But it's hard to bring society together if it's too unequal. In particular, it's hard to bring society together if some parts of society are under threat, that they might lose their business, their home, their family. If they can't support and feed their children, then of course they wind up taking lower risk strategies, which can include polarization, where they think they know what's going on. So if we want to help everybody invest in the public goods, we have to get on top of redistribution. And to me, that's the ultimate challenge we should be focusing on, is figuring out this question of what is adequate redistribution. And again, echoing some of these thoughts about the future of work. There was a little bit about academia that I think I want to address, and it ties in with sort of the open source and open access. Don't forget privacy matters too. Yeah, I'm wrapping up. So don't forget privacy matters too, that we all need to operate in a context where we can have new ideas. Not every piece of academic research is equally valid. We need to go through and we need to have it vetted. So you don't want so much transparency that you can't also have opportunities for expertise and improvement. And in general, I think this is a problem across all the domains. We want transparency in academia, similarly to industry, similarly to government. And that can't mean just making everything comprehensible to everyone. What we have to do is, at an abstract level, try to make ourselves comprehensible to all the major stakeholders. And then always provide some kind of pathway so that people who want to know more details know what they need to do, again, to level up to the capacity to be able to understand that. But I don't think we can just make everything totally open. It's not that easy, right? If you show everybody everything, they're not going to have time to read it all. So
yeah,
that's
I assume you're totally right. Joanna, many thanks. That was so much food for thought for the authors that I would assume.
Okay,
so
one last sentence, please.
One.
Don't only look west. Please look south to Africa, and please look east. We are a unique thing as EU. So do not only think, although I do look forward to having a better relationship than we've had with America, but don't think only one direction.
Yeah, and we also got that we don't have to look at Mars, right? I get that you're not a huge fan of Mars colonization, but fortunately, Tech for Society, probably that problem won't be as big anytime soon, I'm afraid. Thank you very much, Joanna. That was very, very much food for thought for the authors of the paper. And so let's dive into Rasmus's comments. Rasmus is a data guy, a machine learning guy by himself, a strong researcher, and he has founded something called the first venture studio for AI. I was wondering what that might be, but I think it's a sort of incubator, bringing together all important stakeholders who you need in order to build a strong AI ecosystem and strong AI companies. Rasmus, we'll discuss your company sometimes else. Now we are very, very curious for your feedback to the paper. Thanks you're here.
Exactly. Thanks for the kind introduction, and thanks for letting me comment on the paper. First of all, congrats on publishing it. I think it's a great initiative. It's also really great to bring all stakeholders together, and I guess you can also see that here as the people commenting on it. We all come from very different stakeholders, and I very much see also here the same kind of mindset. So that's great. I think the scenario testing is a good idea. I think that often you see policy recommendations, but then they're not kind of tested, and making it clear with these scenarios, I think is great in this paper. And I actually also like, I personally actually like the reference to the Mars. I think it shows that that you are thinking big, and also in terms of major and bold projects. Now about co-creation, I think this is very important. I think it's actually also the only way we can be successful in bringing AI to the real world, and also to bringing it to society and individuals. I mean, we've been seeing that ourselves. We've been building one company in the space of medical imaging, which is not just technically a hard problem and from business side a hard problem, but also touches a lot of regulation, and also ultimately touches doctors using the product, but also regular consumers and users and individuals from the society. And I think for us, it was super helpful to actually involve all these stakeholders from day one, and also co-create with them. So I'm very much in favor of that. In the end, you need to make sure that you're building something that is compliant with regulation, but it's also something the individual adopts, because that's also, even from an economical perspective, you incentive that people use your product. And so I think the classical, like, sequential way of innovation, where you have universities where technology companies spin out, then build products, then think about regulation, and then finally touch the users, I think that is very slow, and also can lead to results that then don't get adoption. So from day one, basically parallelizing that and including all these stakeholders is a great thing, and we should definitely do, and we are also doing as an organization. I think we need to just be careful there that we are not making things too slow. I mean, there's basically a trade-off. So the more people you involve, the more stakeholders you involve, it's also slowing things down. It's also like there's sometimes conflicting interests. So I think you just need to find the right balance there. But overall, I'm very positive about this. Now, talking about the different dimensions, economy, society, and individual, I think it's a great concept. It's great to think about these different stakeholders. I think we need to also make sure, though, that there's this very strong interdependence. And when we think about regulatory changes, we are always affecting usually several of those dimensions. And so making sure that when we make a regulatory change, who we affect, and that we maybe also should think from the other side, basically from the regulatory side, like what are the levers we have and where can we have the largest impact, and then thinking about, okay, what dimensions does it touch, I think would be a helpful way to think about it. I still think, I mean, the economy is a great lever there. The government has a very clear role how to affect economy, and I think also, like, if we want to make sure that the next AI companies are also built in Europe and are built with our values, we need to make sure they're built here in Europe. And so I think kind of starting there with the economy, making sure we're building the applications here, but then involving all the different stakeholders, I think is the way to success. What's been missing in the paper? I think I wish there would be a bit more focus on also other areas of application. I mean, with this year, with COVID, and generally healthcare being a very prominent topic, I think there was a strong focus on that on the paper, but I think there are also other areas, I think as mentioned before, like climate, like manufacturing, mobility, education that should be touched. So I think like adding a few more of these use cases to the paper, I think would provide broader applicability of what's been written there. I think in the second part, we need to sometimes be a bit careful that we don't mix digitization and AI. Like I felt like there were a few pages where if you would have replaced the word AI with digitization, the paper would also still make sense. So I think there either it needs to be a bit more explicit that it's not just focused on AI, but also on some aspects of digitization in general, or it should maybe only address the more AI specific segments. But I generally like a strong focus also on bringing AI into the public sector and seeing what are the big applications levers there. Lastly, I really like the ecosystem approach. I think we in Germany or even on the European level, we need to very much think in terms of ecosystems, and ecosystems not just in terms of including all the stakeholders, but also having the right domain expertise for building AI applications, because they're so interdisciplinary, right? Again, talking about our medical imaging company, we have doctors in the companies, people who have been selling into the healthcare space, machine learning scientists, people who know the regulatory landscape, very different people. They usually wouldn't meet. They're from very different environments. And so creating more ecosystems where these people meet and they come together so they can create something jointly, I think is very helpful. And I mean, one last piece of advertising, something we've been doing, we're actually launching an AI campus in Berlin, which is opening in April next year, which has the goal of bringing together more than 400 people from startups, from large corporates, but also from the policymakers, think tanks, and also society, to have like one physical place, one common coffee machine in the end, where you can co-create solutions and where you can make sure they're created with our value system. And I think I wish there would be more of these physical, local ecosystem that create this density also across Europe. And so, yeah, generally, I really like the paper, and thank you very much for inviting me, and all the best for the next steps of iterating the paper. And now I look very much forward to the discussions.